Welcome to Hell Guys, this is Flowergothic. Hey guys, it's Flowergothic, whose only fear in the world is fangirls. It's surreal that even years after I uploaded them, my two Yandere simulator videos are still the most viewed things on my channel. The first one awkwardly voiced my developing problems with the game, and the second one angrily voiced my problems with the game's development. A lot of people liked it, but some people complained in the comments and called me the T-slur even though I was born female. And I never thought I would do a third video. After Yandere Simulator 2, YandereDev, we need to have a talk, I didn't think there was anything else left to say. Recently, however, out of curiosity, and because I threw away my original video plans, I decided to once more check in on Yandere Simulator's development. And not only did I learn that Osana was delayed again, but I learned how fucked up of a game developer and a person YandereDev is. So let's talk about it today, shall we? Let's take a deep dive into the heart of this Californian weeb full of empty promises. But first, my disclaimers, because of course I have them, I always have them! Number one, I'm going to be focusing more on YandereDev as a person rather than the game's mechanics. I played Yandere Simulator for the first time in years to get a sense of the game's improvements, and I'll show footage whenever necessary. I'll link to some videos in the description below if you want a better look at Yandere Simulator as a game. Number two, please do not harass anyone I mention in this video. I do not, nor will I ever, condone any sort of hateful rhetoric towards the people I discuss. Number three, are you an who wants to write about how wrong I am in the comments? Go ahead, but any slurs directed against me or anyone else will result in an instant block from my channel. Please behave yourselves. First off, however, I'm going to explain some terms y'all might not be as familiar with. You can watch them or not, it's up to you, but for those who are unfamiliar with these gaming terms, here you go. Game engine, a software that allows you to develop video games. They allow you to code actions, render, etc. assets. Media including, but not limited to, 3D models, animations, and illustrations. Usually store-bought. They can be used for characters and graphics, but most professional games don't use a lot of assets. Using a lot of license-free assets in a commercial game is usually frowned upon, as they aren't seen as original. Now, on with the shit show! YandereDev, whose real name is Alex, weaved his way onto the internet in the 2000s as Evasiphon. He spent a lot of his time on the otaku havens 4chan and Gaia Online, where he repeatedly pissed people off by spamming his streams and exhibiting incel-like behavior. I once knew a girl. I thought she would be a good match for me because we shared the same values, hobbies, and interests. We got along with one another really well, and I think we would have made a great couple. However, the moment I implied I might be interested in her, she completely cut me out of her life and now refuses to even speak to me anymore. We had a nice friendship and she threw it away just because I admired her and wanted to be closer to her. I think I know why she wanted to push me away. Because she's beautiful, and my appearance is extremely unappealing. Sometimes, all she would ever talk about was cute boys and the latest cute guy she saw, and the latest ugly, creepy guy who tried to flirt with her. That aspect of her personality was the one thing I found very unattractive, but everything else about her was great, so I ignored that. She probably thought she was too good for me, that she deserved a more handsome boyfriend than me. She would probably rather have a good-looking boyfriend than an ugly guy who is a perfect match for her. On her MySpace, people leave comments on her picture saying, "You're so hot, you're such a boy magnet, you're a perfect 10 out of 10. I bet it has given her an excessively high opinion of herself. She probably thinks she is so beautiful, so desired, so valuable, that she can afford to turn down any guy she doesn't like just because he isn't hot. After all,
If she is hot enough to get any hot guy she wants, why waste time with ugly guys, right? Because of my experience with that girl, I avoid complimenting pretty girls. I don't want to contribute to their ego and make them even more self-absorbed and give them even more reason to think they are too good for a guy just because the poor fellow was born ugly. Discuss. Pretty girls, egotistical pretty girls, rejected a guy just because he was born with a bad face.
You're just making it less likely for you to get a girlfriend, man.
If you want more evidence on his misogyny, you don't need to look very far. He repeatedly wished that girls were more like the ones he saw on the animes. Docile, pure, and innocent. He even wrote fan fiction about innocent underage girls in sexual situations. Siegfried looked down at Tira's breasts. He hastily removed the gloves from his hands, and they fell to the floor with heavy thumps. After a moment's hesitation, he placed his bare hands on Tira's chest and spent a few moments simply enjoying the sensation before he began to fondle and massage the breasts in his hands. The more he touched her, the more his lust grew. After searching for the string to pull in order to untie the laces that held her top together, he found it and pulled it with nervously trembling fingers. As he'd imagined, quite a few times by now, the center of the top split down the middle, exposing Tira's breasts fully. He continued to fondle her breasts, now able to move them more freely. After his arousal had grown even more, he closed his eyes and lowered his head until his face was pressing into her breasts. He moved his head around, rubbing his face against her breasts, and planted soft kisses across them, letting his tongue slip out of his mouth slightly to drag it across her chest. When his lips found the nipple of her right breast, he suckled on it.
Anyway, his ultimate weeb dream was to become an indie game developer. His first magnum opus was Untitled Fighting Game, an epic game whose coding was criticized by Skullgirls developer Mike Z. Now, I'm not saying that Skullgirls is a perfect game. It really isn't. I personally prefer Smash. But at least it was 1, released, and 2, a well-coded game.
Then came his second magnum opus, Titled Fighting Game, aka Lunar Scythe. It stars Luna, the illegitimate love child of Ruby Rose and Ebony Darkness Dementia Ravenway. So she dies, and I guess the devil sees the vigilante spirit in her, and offers to bring her back to life if she kills the souls of the sinful. And yes, this sounds like edgy Cuphead, but in his defense, Cuphead hadn't been invented yet.
The game idea wasn't that well received on the internet. People criticized Luna's character as underdeveloped and a Mary Sue, and instead of improving his craft, YandereDev did the responsible thing and rage quitted. Keep this characterization in mind though, it'll be important later. I suck at winking, I apologize for that.
In 2014-ish, YandereDev posted about his third magnum opus, a Yandere simulator, in the 4chan thread V. The initial concept was rather simple. An anime girl would murder the competition for her senpai and try to win his heart. You know, like an actual yandere! The idea was well received, and others contributed gameplay mechanics, like the panties Yanchan can wear and the use of panties as currency. What else would you expect from a shitty-ass image board? So YandereDev got out of his weeb lair, kinda, and got himself some Unity assets to play around with. In regards to Unity itself, it's a versatile engine that isn't hard to use. However, it does require that you know what you're doing in order to achieve your artistic vision. From indie adventure games to famous mobile apps to playable Russian novels, practically anything can be made with the Unity engine. Hell, big-name game companies have used Unity for console remasters. Katamari Damacy, its remaster was made on Unity. Final Fantasy IX, its modern console ports were courtesy of Unity.
However, due to its accessibility, Unity has gained a reputation for making some not-so-good games. It's kind of like the Wii of game engines. Great games when you put in the time and effort, but full of fucking shovelware.
He also got a YouTube channel to release updates on the game. Nothing much was shown at first, just some now uncanon cutscenes and gameplay mechanics testing. However, what gave the game more attention, including my own, were famous YouTube gamers who played the debugs for shits and giggles. People grew more and more curious about the game, and its regular debug updates only fueled the fire of interest. Of course, one or two of them were delayed, but people's interest was still piqued. It was at this point when YandereDev made the most progress on the game. Senpai became a proper character, teachers and elimination methods were introduced, and the school got a minor makeover. Volunteers even stepped up to help the game achieve its vision.
However, the cracks began to form on the day of our Lord, July 15, 2015. On this day, YandereDev uploaded the first two of many videos addressing the unnecessary emails his fans sent him and how they are becoming annoying and blah blah blah. Let's take a look.
I receive a lot of bug reports from people who haven't read the list of bugs that I already know about. I receive a lot of questions from people who haven't checked the frequently asked questions page. I receive a lot of emails from people who want to request or suggest features that I have no interest in including in the game. I receive a lot of emails from people who, for some reason or another, can't get the game to run.
I can relate to you there, YandereDev. Frivolous emails can really hinder your work and make it hard for you to accomplish anything. If I were you, I'd set up a filter on your email account.
Assuming you use Gmail like me, you gotta click on the little gear on the top right, click Settings on the drop-down menu, then navigate towards Filters and Blocked Addresses. There, scroll down to Create New Filter, and then you can configure your inbox to only show you emails from people who follow your instructions.
It was very difficult to get any work done over the past 2 weeks. 2 days were spent at Anime Expo, and 2 days were spent traveling in and out of Los Angeles. 9 days were spent answering emails, leaving me with 1 day to make this video.
You spend 2 weeks doing nothing but answering emails and going to a fan convention? Dude, your priorities are super whack. Why did you have to devote so much time to your emails?
On July 2nd, I added a new page to the blog with clear instructions on how to volunteer for Yandere Simulator. The result was an avalanche of emails from people offering to help out with the game. Because I was unavailable to answer emails during my time in Los Angeles, the emails piled up.
That's on you for being shit at scheduling, man. Why couldn't you have added that page until after you came back from the anime convention?
Oh yeah, I forgot that Midori Green was introduced in this video. She's intended to be a representation of the stupid questions people ask YandereDev, like, why not hire a secretary to go through your emails? And if the students know there is a serial killer on the loose, why would they keep coming to school? Midori makes some decent points, each with their own ups and downs. YandereDev rejects them all, and says he'll be much more selective about which emails he'll respond to, instead of just filtering them with an automatic email filter. The second video goes into the specifics of which emails he won't be responding to instead of filtering out. I'm not going to delve too deeply in that list because there's nothing wrong about who he won't respond to.
However, he goes into the specifics of what he wants his volunteers to be, which I will snark at because it's total bullshit.
Don't volunteer if you're still in elementary school. Don't volunteer if you have no examples of previous work to show me. Don't volunteer if you openly admit that you have no skills whatsoever. Don't volunteer if you can't handle the idea that your work may eventually be replaced. Don't volunteer if you have less than a year's worth of experience doing whatever you're volunteering to do. Don't volunteer if you can't handle your work being criticized. Don't volunteer if your English skills are not good enough to understand instructions. Don't volunteer to be a 3D modeler if you can't create textures. Don't volunteer to be an artist if you can only draw stick figures. Don't volunteer to be a voice actor if your microphone sounds like a tin can and a string.
So all in all, YandereDev is looking for adult volunteers with professional experience. There are 2 problems with this. Number 1, very few adults will take the idea of Yandere Simulator seriously. It's a game that uses mostly store-bought assets and was promoted by Let's Players young kids watch. Remember that I discovered this game when I was 14. Number 2, after talking with someone with significant game dev experience, I've learned that unpaid volunteer work for a for-profit product is considered a red flag within the community. It's the gaming equivalent of being commissioned for exposure, and is the best way to ensure freelancers won't work on your product, ever. Most professionals have better things to do than to provide free work on your anime fetish game.
Then, Midori says what I've been saying. YandereDev sucks at time management.
I understand why you would say that. Though I have several years of experience in the game industry, I have no experience being the director, leader, manager, producer, and programmer of a project simultaneously. I have no experience dealing with a project gaining attention as rapidly as Yandere Simulator has. It will definitely take me some time to learn how to manage this project more efficiently. There will definitely be some weeks when progress appears slow. I will definitely make some mistakes while I work on this project. All I can ask is that you forgive me for my mistakes.
Anyway, as a reward for asking some good questions, Midori gets murdered and all is well for a little while. With the help of new volunteers, the students, the school, and Ayana's house all got a makeover. Clubs were added, personalities were established, and a timeline for the game was released. YandereDev predicted a release of Osana in 2017, a Kickstarter in March of the same year, and a 2019 release.
But then, disaster struck!
On January of 2016, the second crack was formed. Yandere Simulator was officially banned from Twitch. A lot of the games on the ban list are games of an overtly sexual nature, like Honey Pop and Sakura Angels, or have offensive content, like and I can see why Yandere Simulator was given the boot. The games on the banned list are ones that violate Twitch's community guidelines, formerly rules of conduct, and Yandere Simulator breaks some of them. It is a violent game with sexual references, including the panty shots, all done by minors. I know YandereDev claims the characters are all at least 18, but since this is a high school setting...
In YandereDev's defense, he should have been informed that the game was banned on Twitch and why exactly it was banned. If my content was ever removed from a platform, I sure would want to know that it happened and why.
However, YandereDev's criticism of Twitch goes a layer deeper. He encouraged his followers to outright harass Twitch employees at conventions to see why Yandere Simulator was banned, as if they're all part of some conspiracy, which worked as well as you think. A year later, instead of working on Osana for his intended demo release, he uploaded a warning to all game developers, mentioning that Twitch still hadn't told him why his anime game was banned and how it was so newsworthy, 6 game-based websites reported on it.
He then complains about how it's, so unfair.
It can't be from panty shots because Natsuhiro High School is allowed on Twitch and that has panty shots. I checked and only around 10 Japanese Twitch accounts have streamed it in the past year, so I don't think it's a popular enough game to justify a ban. It can't be from seeing high school girls naked because other games that do are allowed on Twitch. He proves this by showing another Japanese game, where the high school girls are censored. And here's the thing about Japanese law. Genitalia must be censored on obscene content, and it should be noted that Honey Pop has a censored version for mainstream sales that leaves the adult characters in their underwear. But the game is still banned. It can't be from the violence against minors because the Persona games are allowed on Twitch. Persona is a fantasy sci-fi horror game series where people fight against monsters. And yes, Persona 4 is at its core a murder mystery, but it's rated M by the ESRB and is therefore allowed. It also doesn't involve you trying to clean up after your killings.
I'd continue, but I don't want this to go on for another hour.
He then compares Yandere Simulator to South Park: The Stick of Truth, another M-rated role-playing game that doesn't involve the sexual exploitation and literal murder of minors. He, albeit justifiably, complains about getting no response from anyone involved with the Twitch support team about why Yandere Simulator was banned, including some people at Twitter implying he was being a pest for asking, because of course Twitch employees have nothing better to do than listen to a guy with an unfinished game repeatedly ask why said game had been banned.
He then gave 5 theories on why his game was banned. A misunderstanding on someone's end, despite a team of moderators determining what goes on the list, content that has since been removed, and anti-anime bias. The anime games that have been prohibited are of an obviously sexual nature, and the games that have been prohibited are obviously of a sexual nature, which violates Twitch's code of conduct. Furthermore, all games with an adults-only rating are banned outright, enforcing the rules on unprofitable games and SJWs. Okay, YandereDev, you're familiar with the term Twitch girls, right? They are, or were, female streamers who tended to favor sexual appeal instead of the content they were streaming. If those people were crying about Yandere Simulator being sexist, wouldn't they have heavily called out these people too for perpetuating the sexy gamer girl woo stereotype? If Twitch considered Yandere Simulator offensive to women, wouldn't they have banned titles with similar content like Grand Theft Auto and Leisure Suit Larry? Oh right! They haven't! Come up with a better Gamergate argument, you shitbag.
A week later, he backtracks a bit, saying that not only had Twitch repeatedly tried to contact him, but the game deserved to be banned in 2016 because it violated the extreme violence rule.
So, why was Yandere Simulator banned? According to an email sent to YandereDev, Twitch claimed it was because of the panty shots, the nudity, the violence-focused debug builds, and the fact that it all involved minors. Now, these are good reasons to ban a game. So how does YandereDev take it?
Well, it's not going to get me anywhere, but I feel like I can dispute all of these points.
What? You realize that your game takes place in a high school where your main character is canonically 17? If I got my math right?
But he does attempt to dispute Twitch's claims, mainly by claiming he can add things that people can do instead of the panty shots or be naked, and that the game is intended to punish you if you attempt to murder people too much.
First of all, the player can still do the banned activities, and second of all, there's an old gaming story that explains why I take issue to the difficulty claim.
The year was 2004. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas had just been released to critical acclaim. Now, in the game, the player character can have sexual relations with various women, initiated when they ask you to stop by their place for some hot coffee. But the sexual exploits were never intended to be shown.
Enter the game modders, who discovered unused code where you could control your player character while having sex. They jumped at this and released it all over the internet, allowing people to fuck their virtual girlfriends whenever they pleased. The backlash was heavy. The game was recalled, re-rated to adults only, and rekindled the video games are bad debate. The game's publisher was even sued by the city of Los Angeles for failure to disclose the sexual content of the game. The developers of GTA San Andreas responded by releasing a patch that took out the unused code and caused the game to crash should it be modded. And on that day, a lesson was learned. Take out your unused coding from your game before you release it. And here's my deal. I have no problem with modifying games. I play Sims 4 and Fallout New Vegas with a number of mods that improve my personal gameplay.
But here's the downside to mods. They can be incredibly adult in nature. The extreme violence mod in Sims 4 makes it possible to kill your Sims in graphic ways, blood and all. The nude patch mod in Fallout 3 allows you to play with big-titted naked NPCs. However, both of those were created by game fans with great coding experience. I don't trust YandereDev's skills enough to believe he'll take out the coding that'll make it easier to kill people.
And it doesn't matter anyway, Yandere Simulator is still banned on Twitch as of 2020.
So remember how YandereDev said he wanted to get the demo out by January of 2017? Well, that ended up not happening. On January 2nd, he uploaded a 2-part video dedicated to Osana's progress. It was quite a lot. He implemented Osana in Senpai's interactions, discussed how students would be around the rival at all times, established how rival elimination methods would affect Senpai's mental state, and estimated that it would take another month or so to implement all of Osana's elimination methods. Then later in the same month, he announced he had a family emergency and had to delay Osana even more. People forgave him, and then February came. In February, YandereDev released the 2-part "What's Taking So Long?" explaining how he's one guy despite all the volunteers that were working for him, and basically spending about an hour complaining instead of actually working on his game. He then discusses 4 solutions, and almost everyone tells him to proceed as planned rather than downgrading the game to a hobby or giving it to a company. It's 2020 and Osana still hasn't been finished yet. Pals. And it's kind of ironic that people said not to rush in giving the game to a company when...
Picture it, Sicily, California, March 2017. YandereDev was contacted by an indie game publisher known as TinyBuild. The owner of TinyBuild and his wife were huge fans of Yandere Simulator and wished to help in any way they could. And apparently, YandereDev was hoping for that partnership despite swearing off business deals in prior videos. What did this mean for the game? Well, according to YandereDev himself, it would bring a team of people to program the game for him. As a result, he could dedicate himself to achieving the game's creative vision, as well as having no idea how the game itself would be budgeted. So, how did that go? You saw that with your own eyes, folks. The partnership lasted less than a year before it fell apart. How? Well, the programmer assigned to rewrite Yandere Simulator's code would have done so in a way that would make YandereDev's concurrent progress obsolete. And instead of patiently waiting for the code to be refactored, he got pretty upset at not being able to be a game developer who consistently released updates. Despite, having the ability to explain why he couldn't update at any time.
So the code wasn't redone, the developer went off to work on other TinyBuild projects, and the company dropped the project from its repertoire. And instead of doing the mature thing and announcing the drop, he deleted every comment that mentioned TinyBuild, therefore making his situation worse. At least he admitted staying silent about it for half a year was a bad idea.
YandereDev, you can't just keep doing your own thing if you want to be taken seriously. Sacrifices have to be made! And so we reach June of 2018, a rather important month in history. I graduated high school, the first US-North Korea summit was held, and YandereDev had a complete and utter meltdown. I went over the video in the most sardonic manner possible 3 days after its initial release. But looking back, I still have more to say.
It's funny how he discussed he was going to crowdfund to hire a professional programmer when he couldn't even work with the win TinyBuild gave him. The one that wanted to rewrite all the code so he couldn't update for months. The horror! A number of the things you said you needed to implement could have either been implemented after Osana or cut entirely. The mysterious obstacle is Raiburu, an invincible bodyguard for Osana, in the first week of gameplay. She really has no reason to exist. Not all the school locations are needed to implement Osana. Was the Japanese garden for the martial arts club really necessary for Osana? No Osana! Really, all you needed was the stable frame rate. Regardless, this video blew up. People blasted YandereDev for his lack of Osana after years, and he cracked. He made a new official subreddit to prevent quote-unquote bullying on the old one. He shouted at fans on Discord, and he tried to distance himself from his past instead of owning up to it like an adult! He spent the next few months doing damage control, making a 10-minute video on how long it takes to make a video game, comparing the made-from-scratch Stardew Valley and the hand-drawn Cuphead to the mostly asset-based Yandere Simulator, which of course did wonders to the people who were having doubts about him. And the game, well, faded away. the major YouTubers stopped doing Let's Plays of it, and no one of note discussed him, which leads us to... As of March 2020, the game is still in development. Osana is allegedly complete and only being fixed for bugs. An introduction cutscene was added for our enjoyment. Yandere-chan became able to manipulate students. Invincible bodyguard Raiburu Fumetsu was revealed. Yandere-chan gained the ability to work for a maid cafe? And more.
His financials are still decreasing, though. It has been halved within the span of 2 years, and is now less than minimum wage according to... And another thing. Remember something I said earlier this year about finding people's addresses? Granted, some of these wouldn't be too hard to find if you look deeply enough in public records, but it's still incredibly creepy. I know this because, well, I was a notorious stalker in middle and early high school. But for once, I'm going to use my powers for good and tell you all this without divulging anything too TMI. YandereDev doesn't live alone.
In fact, it looks like he still lives with his parents. Why would he care about making minimum wage if he still lives with his parents? I guess we'll never know.
Otherwise, there's not much else going on in Yandere Simulator. I joined the Discord under an alias and lurked around, but nothing of note was being discussed. The game is a shambling corpse of its former self, and it still hasn't even been released! How do you stoop to that low? To be honest, I don't know. The game has been in development for, 6 years now, and there still isn't a single demo? I predict that it's not going to reach its campaign goal once the Kickstarter finally comes out, and then fade into obscurity. But if it actually does reach its goal, I have another theory. It'll end up like Yog Ventures. Remember Yog Ventures? That game based on Yog's cast that never got made even after it got funded? Yeah, it'll probably end up like that. YandereDev. If you're watching this, most people do not take your anime fetish game seriously, and I have no time for any complaining on your end. Please understand that your game is never going to go anywhere and that it's already dead. Or else.